name is Rob Hilkin. I'm the Northern Irish manager of Visual Artists Ireland, and today's been set up in collaboration with Belfast Expose. Let's thank Belfast Expose for hosting and putting together the event. Thank you all very much for coming. Visual Artists Ireland is the professional body to represent artists across the whole of Ireland, and we organise professional development courses, advocacy, support for artists, and this is one of the professional development sessions that we've been running over the last few years with Belfast Expose. So that's really all I want to say. I'm very glad to be here, and I'll hand over to Kira to introduce the panel.
Great. Well, thanks for coming again today, and another warm welcome to Belfast Expose. And thank you to the AI for partnering on the event. So this symposium today is part of the How We Learn exhibition. This exhibition looks at the different contexts of learning and is focused on artists who have approached learning from lots of different perspectives, and in particular looking at the psychological and the physical spaces that are created for learning. On Reading, If I Learned Yield is the work that greets you as you come through the doors of the gallery. Yield has been hugely influential in developing collaborative methodologies between yourself and children, and looking at things like shared authorship and encouraging children to use photography as a tool to take global portrait of education through the interiors of classrooms throughout the world. And James Russell Kant, who looks at the influence of peers, of family members on those kind of lateral relationships on a child's development. So this exhibition represents an inquiry on how Belfast Expose engages with younger people and schools, and is the culmination of an extended period of research into this area. So collaborative practice, as Rob said, is something that Belfast Expose has been actively engaged with over the years, producing major projects through publication and exhibition, which have been the result of long-term collaborations, where a group or individuals have worked together with an artist. So it seems only through running these projects, and I'm sure you're all aware, that the term collaboration can really be understood, tested and challenged. It's a term and a practice that is complex and constantly in the process of being renegotiated. Grant Kester, in a recent article called Collaborative Art and the Limits of Criticism, discussed the difficulty of an objective outsider critically understanding and engaging with this type of work, which usually takes the form of an unfolding process as opposed to a final result. He writes that ideally any critic should spend time with a group in order to really understand and engage with this type of work. So today I hope to open up the term collaborative practice with each of our guest speakers, looking at what it means for them in particular, and hear about a range of innovative projects that are happening at the moment. Through these presentations and then the ensuing discussion, I hope we can extend our critical engagement with this type of work and this way of working. So I'm delighted to have such a brilliant group of guest speakers today, representing a real range of perspectives, from individual artists such as Anne and Marisa, to major art organisations that commission work with you, Annie, like Nothing to Tate, to kind of younger, innovative organisations like Kids Own Publishing with Orla Kenny, and then finally with curators Cleo Fagan and Jenny Guy from the Mobile Art School, who connect major contemporary artists in classrooms within schools. So following on from those presentations, I'll open up the floor to questions, and then that'll lead into a broader discussion of some of the themes and some of the questions that I sent you in advance. And it's a brilliant audience that we have here today, so I'm really looking forward to your contributions and your valuable insights into this way of working as well. So I'll hand over to you then, Jenny, to get started.
Hi, thank you for having us. We're really happy to be here. So my name is Jenny Guy, and I'm the co-founder and director of Mobile Art School along with Keelan Fagan. So Keelan and I, we started Mobile Art School in 2012, and really as a project framework through which to bring our own professional interests and experience of contemporary art practice into school education in Ireland. So So to date, we have two approaches to working in schools. The first is based on short format workshop programs, and the second involves more sustained residency programs. So these approaches are called the artist visits and the artist stays. So they're the core programs that we're seeking to activate with different schools and educational institutions, and working with teams of different artists along the way. So we have several projects behind us at this point, but I'd like to jump in today to talk about one of our most recent projects, and this is a residency program with the artist Rona Byrne. So after showing you this, I'll expand on Mobile Art School itself and then present some thoughts about our recent strategies for disseminating contemporary art practice within the educational context. So this is an image of one of artist Rona Byrne's work in EMA. So for 1 year now, Rona has been working with St Catherine's National School in Rush, County Dublin, on the first instance of Mobile Art School's The Artist Stays programme. So we chose Rona because of her approach to materials and site and context. And we also saw that Rona's had an ability to, or has an ability to experiment within her own practice. And so this suggested to us that she'd also be unafraid to change tack when working with the students if necessary, when kind of responding to kind of the more practical constraints also of like time, space and resources. So to begin, Rona introduced the students to the artist studio as a space to own. So she helped the students form a committee and form an ideas board that kind of guides the studio's evolution. So to date she's worked with over a 30-week period with 60 students in total. So also in the beginning, Rona emphasised her belief in kind of the importance of the artist notebook as a creative tool for kind of keeping track of experiments and ideas for work. And she also began to introduce, like right from the beginning, introduce the students to the process of researching other artists' work, as this is a natural step in evolving their own ideas about what they might create. So she placed really strong emphasis on works that employ the different senses and diverse environmental interventions, including Robert Smithson, this is Nancy Holtz, Samantha, Anish Kapoor, Tristan Jean-Claude, and many, many more. So here, the students are working with these magnifying glasses, and so they're going to be investigating the school as a site for artistic production. So in this image, the students, they're taking part in a silent walk around the school's grounds, looking through these magnifying glasses, and it's kind of an alternate way of looking and responding. So the students and Rona, they're also given access to a disused part of the school grounds to transform into an outdoor studio, and which they could realise different forms that they were working on inside. So they covered themes of it being a sculpture garden, a threshold space that they could go in and out of, or a site for land art. So Rona and the students are currently working towards an open day this Friday, so kind of a combination of 30-week-long residencies. That's a really exciting week for us. So as this is a shot of the studio, so it's a long blackboard that kind of goes along the studio wall and sort of changes from week to week. So as Rona's been working with the students, she's been continually kind of questioning the difference between decorating a site or a studio versus actually making artwork or thinking through the process of making artwork. So for example, she's worked with the students all along, exploring all aspects of the given site, so drawing out maps and making models of the studio and the sculpture garden, and experimenting with ideas that then might be actualised into shapes and actions. And then also along the way, many ideas that started out strong weren't always followed through with. So Rona introduced the students to a process of experimentation, where they might begin to feel comfortable starting things and not actually finishing them, and where the failure of certain ideas was simply a step along the way. So this was kind of an exciting phase of experimenting with inflatables. So Rona introduced the history of inflatable structures in contemporary art practice, as well as some of the engineering requirements for making these forms. Another one. So this process, while generated from the studio, has obvious links also to areas outside the studio in terms of the students' own classes. So there's links perhaps to subjects such as maths, science, history, as well as contributing to group participation and group decision making. So this is kind of an early days picture of the sculpture garden. So the work that the students have been producing has been quite varied. So here they had the freedom to work solo or in groups. So students were inspired by various artists' work. This is kind of inspired by Amanda Goldsworthy piece. And here it is again, working away. And I have a few kind of notes or quotes from Rona. It's interesting to get her perspective. So she's written here, the endeavour to construct the timber cube took many attempts, rescrewing the corners over and over as the piece kept failing. I encouraged the use of tools under supervision, which the children responded really well to this responsibility. Trust in process and ability was encouraged throughout the project residency. Also working in teams and the negotiation of constructing something together was encouraged throughout. And here's another short quote. Large black sphere sculptures were made over a 2-month period. All of the students had some input in the making of these, encouraging a sense of ownership for each student. So there was a lot of ongoing conversations about land art. So this is an experiment. And these students here, they're creating kind of a temporary structure or exploring the creation of temporary shelters. And this is not the same. And again, this is looking at the temporary shelter and kind of incorporating the cubic form that's been a focus of the residency. And here, this is a bit of a transition. So this is action as artwork. So along with more fixed forms inspired by installation and land art practices, the students began to question whether an artwork, whether an action might be considered as an artwork. So Rona had shown The Gates by Christo and Jean-Claude, which is in Central Park in New York City, and there's going to be a large number of kind of nylon kind of gates as thresholds along the footpaths. So Rona had simultaneously brought in some orange material that she'd sourced from a local kind of art recycling centre called Recreate. So the children had kind of put together this kind of colour orange with this Christo work, and they kind of decided to create their own human sculptural action. So here it is again. At break time in the school, the children have to freeze and then resume classes. So this was kind of a performative intervention during break time. So all the children kind of froze, and then they created this kind of circle and created this kind of orange circular structure, human sculpture. So this relatively kind of long-term residency, this is a work that Rona's recently done in Norwich. And so it's been a relatively long-term residency, and it's allowed Rona to really share her own research and knowledge that's currently driving her own practice with the students. So as Mobile Art School, we are curating her active research into the school, and via